nothing off limits to talk about, but there's a lot at stake here. So with that, I want to say thank you for coming out, and maybe I should tell you kind of how I got in front of you as kind of a starting point, right? It's the first time meeting them. So, if you asked 20 years ago, would you ever be on a Super Bowl Sunday in a bar in Red Bank? I can tell you it's unlikely, and I tell you it's unlikely because I was not politically active. I wasn't registered to vote. This was very foreign to me, all of this stuff. I come from a family of first-generation Americans. My family's immigrants from Eastern Europe, Holocaust survivors. After Auschwitz, those that survived moved to this country. My father had a deli in Newark. If nothing else, I knew more about the deli business than any candidate that ever run for governor in this country. And my mom had an immigration services business directly next door. I grew up in Edison, as I said, went to J.B. Stevens High School. After college, I got a job working on Wall Street at a prestigious firm. Don't judge me, the name is Goldman Sachs, okay? Look, when people kind of say you're similar to Corzine or Murphy, I always point to the fact, I say, look, if we could open our bank accounts, you would see the difference. One step above the barista. It was a prestigious job, but it was a very different situation. But regardless, 9/11 happens. I was in Lower Manhattan. We all had a 9/11 moment that kind of changed maybe how we view the world. For me, it made me think a little bit about what I wanted to do with my life. I went to the senior people at Goldman Sachs and said I was going to leave and enlist in the Marine Corps. And of course, that was kind of an abnormal thing to happen in a place like Goldman Sachs. They thought it was crazy. But I left, I went to Paris Island, and then subsequently first wave of troops out to Iraq. The reason I did it was I just viewed it as a partial payment for citizenship. I had a lot to be thankful for my family, and I thought that that moment in time, it was really important to pay forward that debt. When I came back here, I didn't know anything about this political world. And if you look back what was happening in Hudson County, the mayor at the time was a very popular guy. He was an African-American mayor, the first African-American mayor in the history of Jersey City. His name was Glenn Cunningham. And he was fighting very publicly in the newspapers with a guy you might have heard of who was the congressman then. His name was Bob Menendez.
Oh,
yeah.
Ooh, oh my God.
Right? So I come back from Iraq, and Cunningham, who was a Marine, tried to recognize the people that were deployed and came back. Give him a city proclamation. I was amongst the first deployed and the first back, so he invites me to City Hall, gives me a proclamation. I don't really think anything of it. We spent about 2 hours in his office, and he would just ask a lot of questions. Why would you leave Goldman Sachs? What was it like in Baghdad? What did you see out there? And I would answer the questions because everybody would ask me those questions. I was one of the first back, so I didn't think anything of it. I knew we got along really well, but I didn't think anything of it other than that. 6 months later, I was leaving my job back on Wall Street, trying to get my career back, and I get a phone call. It's a 201 area code. I pick it up, and it's the mayor. And Jersey City's a pretty big place, so it's not every day that the mayor calls you. And he says, "Hey, Steve, how's it going?" We small talk, and he says, "Look, I'd like to talk to you tomorrow in person." And as embarrassing it is, the week before, I was the guy that called about a parking issue. Like, I was that guy. So, I went to the Mayor's Action Bureau, so God is my witness. I thought he was calling me about that. I mean, that's like a reasonable thing. So he says to me, "I'd like to tell you," and I said, "Look, Mayor, it's very inspiring. You call me personally about the parking issue. It's no longer a parking issue." He's like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." So we set a time the next day, go into his office, and he starts a little bit about his relationship with Bob Menendez. And starts talking about this coming June primary. It's 20 years ago now. This coming June primary, he says, Bob Menendez is going to run a whole slate of candidates. He's going to run himself for Congress, and somebody for county clerk, and somebody for county surrogate, and then these committee seats underneath. Okay, sounds great. And then Cunningham says to me, he goes, "We're going to run a whole slate of candidates. We're going to run somebody for Congress, and somebody for surrogate, and somebody for clerk, and these committee seats underneath." I said, "Great. Don't know anything about this. I'm not registered." He says to me, "Look, this is what I'm going to tell you. You may have a knee-jerk reaction adverse to, but I want you to think about this." He says, "People who get involved in politics, there's a couple of common threads there." I said, "Okay." He says, "First, they generally start when they're young, and they build person by person over time." And he said, "The second thing that's really consistent is that most people lose before they win. Whether you're George Bush or Bill Clinton, people lose before they win, they continue to build." So clearly I'm listening. and he's about to pitch me on something. I don't really even know why I'm there. And he says, so what I'd like you to do is to run for Congress against Bob Menendez. It's great that I inspire so much confidence in all of you. But I said this very similar thing. I said, can you repeat that? And he said it again. And I said, look, Mayor, I'm not registered to vote. I don't really know a lot about this. Let me think about it, and I'll get back to you. And you know, look, in his mind, he thought, how many people leave Goldman Sachs to enlist in the Marine Corps? How many people had my background at that point? So that's why he was, I guess, interested in that. But I left City Hall, and I realized, like, really confused. I called my parents. I think where I was staying. I called my parents, called some friends, told them the story that I just told you. I was in City Hall with the mayor. They would say, why were you with the mayor? That's not even the craziest part. I'm not going to talk about that. I'll tell you what he said. And I would tell them what I told them. Everybody had the same reaction. Everybody said the same thing to me. They were like, are you sure that's what he said to you? And I was like, yes, I'm telling you. And so the next day, I called him up and I said I would do it. And the reason I said I would do it, I registered that day, was because I thought it was something I would tell my grandkids. I really did. I thought I would tell them that I ran for Congress. It was like an experience that I had, and I was very excited about it. So campaign starts. I'm running against Bob Menendez. A week before the election, Cunningham has a massive heart attack, passes away. It was a cover of the New York Times, because it's not every day that a mayor in a city like Jersey City, top 100 cities in the country, passes away in office. And then, needless to say, I never became a congressman. But that 6 months campaign really changed something to me, where you speak to all these people and they come to you with these issues about federal and state and local issues, and it kind of sparked this interest in me that's saying I wanted to do that with my life. I feel like that is more meaningful than trading stocks or making money. The following year, I ran for city council in Jersey City against the Jersey City political structure. And it's a very hard thing to do in Hudson County. It's a little bit different than other parts of the state. And we won a very competitive council seat. And I worked really hard once we won that. In 2013, I decided to run for mayor. A very similar campaign to what I'm running now. Very focused on policy, which we'll talk about in a second. Very focused on what I'm going to do to change Jersey City, and very grassroots oriented. And when I tell you that the entire state apparatus was against me in that election, I'm not doing justice to that statement. I mean, every notable person in the state felt the need to weigh in against me for the status quo. Cory Booker felt the need to weigh in. Michael Bloomberg, who wasn't even in New Jersey, the mayor of New York, felt the need to cut a commercial on behalf of the incumbent mayor. My race was one of 2 races in the country that then President Obama decided to weigh in directly for. He decided to weigh in on behalf of Rahm Emanuel, running for mayor of Chicago, and Jeremiah Healy, who was running for mayor of Jersey City. Now, with all of that, I'm here as the first 3-term mayor in 70 years of Jersey City, right? And so, now look, over the last 12 years, those of you who grew up in Jersey City, I met a couple of you here, some of you have visited, some of you see it when you go to the Holland Tunnel in New York. It has changed. We've been the economic backbone of New Jersey. We've been a leader in every environmental issue, on every social service issue. We've been the laboratory of change. People view Jersey City today very differently than they viewed it 12 years ago. And when people say to me, maybe one other thing, when people say to me, of course that would happen in Jersey City. You're 3 miles away from New York. I always say the same thing to them. I say, Jersey City has been 3 miles away from New York for 250 years, okay? And the last 12 years have been different, and we could talk about why. Now, a year and a half ago, I said I was going to run for governor. And everybody said to me, it's too early, why would you do that, blah, 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 blah. And I said at the time that I was starting early for 2 reasons. I was very clear about that. I said, first, if you're going to run a substantive policy campaign that is different than what normal people run, it takes time. You can't do that overnight. And so we would do that. We would roll out these parts of our platform in detail. Most people, when they run for office, they talk in platitudes. We're going to fix New Jersey Transit. We're going to build more housing. We're going to fix the schools. And they speak like that because there's political risk when you say anything in detail. And we said, no, you know what? We're gonna talk in detail to you like people are adults and they deserve to understand what I intend to do. And we're gonna outline that in detail. Our housing plan is 18 pages. Here's what I did in Jersey City. Here's what I learned.
here's what I know I can accomplish for New Jersey. Our transportation plan is 20 pages in detail. It'll outline to you what I can do and how I know what I can do, I will accomplish. Now, not everybody's gonna care about that, but we roll one out, one per month, and then we do a Zoom call with the public. And you get 300-400 people coming into these Zoom calls, activists, to talk about transportation or housing or the environment or health and human services. And I knew that we were onto something different. And those would lead to volunteers, which has grown substantially, larger than any of the other campaigns by far. We'll talk about that. So that's one reason why I started early. The second reason was that if we were going to build a campaign that wasn't relying on these political machines county by county, and we were going to do something really grassroots, people-focused, it takes time. You cannot do that in 6 months. And so we would start organizing person by person with the down ballot stuff. So our campaign is different for sure. And part of that process is doing these sort of things. We do about 3 of them a week, 4 of them a week, and the rooms are definitely growing, which is a sign that people care about, A, what we're talking about, unapologetically for reform and detail about how we're going to change New Jersey. And they're not scripted, these conversations. I mean, what we're going to do now is open it up to you, and there's nothing off limits. You want to talk about politics, you want to talk about the debate, you want to talk about anything you want to talk about, I will stay here. Now, I'm going to tell you, I have at home a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old. I will stay here 9 hours. So we can talk as long as you want, all right? So with that, I just say thank you for coming out today. I really appreciate that. And we can just open up the conversation anywhere you want to go and what you want to talk about. We'll have a conversation about what I think New Jersey needs, and you tell me what you think New Jersey needs, and we'll go from there. So with that, thank you for coming out today. I appreciate it. Well, yes?
So one thing I think a lot of people have been wondering about, talking about, is the fact that you mentioned the Monmouth County Democratic Convention last year as kind of a turning point for Kim.
Why am I not participating?
There you go. So you hear it a little bit.
Okay. So I'm not participating in the convention, and I do think that I'd be competitive if I went, but I made a decision early that I wouldn't compete in any of the conventions. I'll be at the convention. Like today, after this, I'm going to Hunterdon County. I wrote a letter that I'm going to give to every single committee person, which basically explains to them why I'm not competing and appreciating the fact that they do a lot of important work, because I don't want them to feel slighted. The question is why. I told you earlier about these down ballot people that I'm helping to run for office. And there are assembly people throughout the state of New Jersey. I didn't screen them, the committee screened them. I invite them to run after they get the go-ahead. But these are good people. These are people that are working hard, that are in your best interest if they do get elected, because they're going to create accountability in the system. One thing on that, right? A year ago, New Jersey rolled back public records, right? Oprah. Yep. 6 months before that, they rolled back campaign finance, right? Why? Like, ask yourself, why would they do that when hundreds of activists come down to Trenton and say to the legislature, don't do that, it's counter to everybody's interest. So why would they do that? They do that because the legislature in New Jersey doesn't feel they're accountable to you. They feel they're accountable to a political person, a county chairman, that put them in that seat in most other counties. And without the accountability, they do that sort of thing. So these primaries are really important to the system ultimately. Now, why would I not compete in a convention like Monmouth, which is an honest convention, versus a place, let's say, like Middlesex or Essex, where you have a chairman who unilaterally decides? None of these assembly districts are just one county. There are multiple counties. So if you think about, let's say, Monmouth, you share legislative districts with Middlesex. So it becomes very, very difficult for me on messaging with regards to the down ballot candidates. If I have the line or the endorsement or the support in one county, they don't, we overlap and neither of us do, or we overlap where both of us do. It becomes very hard to message. And the way I approached this earlier is maybe it's the Marine Corps component in me, but you don't leave people behind. I brought those people into this. They're relying on us to coordinate in some way to get them elected. If I was in their position, I would not like it if somebody did that to me and left me behind, and I won't do that to them. So that was the decision early on why I'm doing this. And I understand it may hurt me in some corners of this process, but my hope by doing these is that you understand the rationale of it, and then give you the benefit of the doubt come June as you look through this process. So
So that's the background of that. We have a question over here. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love you to share one of the things or several of them that you've done in Jersey City in the past 12 years that I don't know about because I've lived in New Jersey my whole life.
Okay.
Jersey City isn't on my radar.
Okay. It should be on the radar. Let's talk about transit. Okay, we can talk about transit, and then why don't we talk about the first things I'm going to do if I get elected, because I think that is tangentially related to transit. Okay. When we talk about transit, which is a really important issue facing all of New Jersey transit and transportation in general, okay? I often say there isn't another person in the state of New Jersey in elected office, maybe including Phil Murphy, that has as much experience on this as I do. What do I mean, okay? We have parts of Jersey City that are a transit desert. My administration started in 2020 a microtransit system, which is now the largest microtransit system in the United States of America. We did 2.5 million rides in the last 4 years. And those are for predominantly minority and low-income communities, connecting them to transit areas. We were the first to do Vision Zero, which is driving traffic fatalities down to zero. We have the largest bike infrastructure in the state of New Jersey that we built. We're in the ferry business, unfortunately, because we couldn't find a vendor. So I know a thing or two about how this process works, ultimately, okay? With regards to fixing New Jersey transit, every other candidate is going to say, we're going to fix New Jersey transit. You should ask them how, okay? And I will tell you exactly what I will do when I get in there. The first thing is that New Jersey Transit, Phil Murphy last year passed legislation that dedicated a funding source for the first time to New Jersey Transit. The genesis of that idea, according to New Jersey Policy Perspective, which is a think tank, the premier think tank, left-wing think tank, was our policy paper a year earlier on transportation. But in the way that Trenton operates, they did it half-assed. They did it only for 5 years, so you're gonna have to come back to it. And why is it a bigger problem than just the duration of 5 years? Is because you can't bond against a 5-year revenue. It's not certain enough. You need perpetuity in order to capitalize it, okay? So I need to fix that. So that's number one. It's gonna be amongst the first things that I do when I get in there, and I'm gonna tell you why in a second. The second thing is that everybody in this room, is paying for the largest infrastructure project in New Jersey, which is a turnpike widening project of $11 billion going to the Holland Tunnel. Now, originally, when that started, over the extension, when that started, New Jersey would say, the reason we're doing that is to alleviate traffic, alleviate congestion. It's moronic. Why is it moronic? Because the Holland Tunnel is still 2 lanes. It doesn't matter if you build 46 lanes, okay? You're still in a bottleneck in 2 lanes. I'm unapologetic that we would allocate those dollars elsewhere towards mass transit, particularly light rail expansion to Bergen, light rail expansion in South Jersey, and modernizing some of your stations. Because it's capital dollars, it's not a recurring revenue that you're interested in. So right out of the gate, I think that that is a good match in order to kind of modernize the infrastructure. Third, as it relates to buses, which is an issue over here, the buses have been privatized 20 years ago in New Jersey Transit. That's counter to your interest. I talk about that a lot because we see it in Jersey City. Public transportation anywhere in the country does not make money. It's a money loser, okay? And it's understood. I mean, there's other benefits for it. Quality of life, economic development, mobility, right? But you lose money. We understand that. When New Jersey Transit decided to privatize that with private vendors, a private corporation has a different set of faculties as it relates to their priorities there, right? They want to make money, right? And if a route is struggling, which is what you see throughout New Jersey right now, how do you make money off that? You squeeze the route, right? So what do I mean by that? Maybe you clean the buses a little bit less frequently. Maybe you maintenance a little bit less frequently. Maybe you elongate time between routes. And that impacts quality of service, which you get into this death spiral. You need to bring those back into house. Now, I can speak to this because I have a lot of experience on transportation, right? Now, I'm gonna finish your question with what would be the 2 things that I would do first if elected, okay? The first is fix that transportation funding, and the second is reestablish some of the different tax brackets on the higher end of the tax code in New Jersey, because a millionaire's tax from 20 years ago is not the same as a millionaire's tax today, right? $1 million is worth a different amount of money. And so you need to think about people that make 2 million, 2.5, 3 million in order to help on the revenue side. The reason I say that out of the gate, and I'm unapologetic about it, is because I know from being a mayor, which I think is the best qualification for being governor, that the first 6 months, your political capital is different than the next 3.5 years. So if you're gonna fix some of the structural problems on the revenue side, you need to come in hard, aggressively, out of the gate in order to fix those things when your political capital is high. Some of the other things that we talked about are easier to get Republicans on board for, easier to move later. So that's kind of, let's say, on transportation. I mean, I could talk about the environment, I could talk about health services. We've done a lot in Jersey City. We really have been at the forefront of issues. And the reason I could speak to this stuff is because I'm in the weeds on this. It's really a great place as it relates to laboratories for change. Yes?
Democrats are notorious for bringing a knife to a government.
Yeah.
We need to be more tough.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that from your perspective? Do you have the feelings to go up against what's in the White House right now?
Yeah. So there isn't, if you judge somebody, let me take a step back. If you judge somebody by their friends, it's fair way, or if you judge them by their enemies, that's the other expression, right? There isn't a person in New Jersey that has the same scars that I do as it relates to Bob Menendez and George Norcross and Chris Christie at the Apex. When nobody would speak up, I was on an island. You could Google this stuff as far as history goes. I think it speaks to the fact of who I am, okay? I am not a wallflower, and it's part of the reason why that Democratic establishment is not really in my favor as it relates to change and the things I talk about. So I don't think anybody who knows me or knows my personality would say that I am not a vocal person, that I'm not willing to dig in on a fight. It's in my DNA, and I think I come from a different place on that. One other thing, how many people watch the debate? Wow. Okay, we got some people told me I should have worn a tie. But let me say this, okay? I think the fact that there was one issue there that I was different than the other five as it relates to the courts, okay? And the other five said that we should go with this decorum that New Jersey has had historically, where we appoint Republican and Democrat, Republican then Democrat. And what I said at the debate, if you remember, was that the Republicans don't play by those rules. They don't. If they played by those rules, Merrick Garland would be a U.S. Supreme Court justice, okay? And we need to understand the fact that there are 1 million more Democrats in this state. There's more legislative or congressional districts that are Democrat. And we need to take a stand and say that the courts, as an example, should reflect the population of the state, ultimately, right? And so I'm unapologetic about that stuff. I dig into those sort of things because I come into this with some core convictions, which I think is important, and I'm willing to stand up for them. One final thing I'll say of this, okay, is that if I was to ask the 100 people in this room, why did Kamala lose in November? I bet you have 100 different reasons, okay? My belief, okay, is really that it comes down to the fact that on issues, it was hard to really pin down on some core issues where she stood. Middle East, universal health care, fracking, I mean, all over the map. And I'm a core supporter, and it was hard to defend, so you can imagine what somebody who isn't a core supporter would think about that. I believe that if you are going to be successful in November in this climate, you need somebody that's a fighter. I think I qualify best for that. And you need somebody that's willing to articulate core beliefs in a very clear way, standing up for vulnerable communities, whether it's the trans community, whether it's the immigrant community, and willing to say these are the reasons why we're doing that. I think I stand pretty uniquely in that space amongst the six of us. Brian?
Thank you, Steve. We are now learning that our bodies, everybody in here, their bodies are ridden with microplastics.
Yeah.
There's the equivalent of a spoon, a plastic spoon in our brains right now.
Yes.
How willing would you be to sign plastic reduction legislation?
You should see what's going on in my house, what my wife is doing right now. I mean, it is like wild. Like the amount, I mean, she's thrown out pots and like all she reads about is this microplastic situation going on here. And the dyes, red 40, yellow, whatever, etc. Yes, I do think that New Jersey, when your leadership has a responsibility as it relates to health, and things that are illegal or not permitted in other countries should be a starting point for how the U.S. looks at some of these health issues, and I think that New Jersey could be a leader on it. California has banned some of those things, particularly some of those dyes in particular, and I think that that's a place that a normal person can agree on it. The only reason I know about this is because my wife is really involved in this sort of thing. And so, yes, I do think it is something that it's important. I don't talk about it in a lot of these settings because nobody ever asks, but I do think it's something that's important that we could actually dig into.
Thank you.
Yes?
I grew up in South Jersey, and
Yeah.
the last couple governors, they just ignored South Jersey.
Yeah.
Salem and Cumberland County.
Yeah.
When I grew up, there was glass factories, there was Progresso, there was, Campbell Soup, they all left. There's no transportation there. When my grandmother grew up, there was a train right to Philly from Vineland, New Jersey.
Yeah.
My aunt commuted, gone, decimated, and my brother-in-law works in Bridgeton,
Yeah.
High School. It's a wasteland. Can you commit to not ignoring South Jersey?
That's like two like puppy dogs, of course. Let me say this though. I believe that some of the issues surrounding some of the geographies in New Jersey, and this goes back to kind of the premise of our campaign a little bit, right? Is that you've had for a long period of time governors that don't understand municipal government in a very, very nuanced way. And it's not a knock on Phil Murphy, but I don't think unless you understand what it's like to be a mayor or a council person with unfunded mandates and how different things relate or are interconnected, it's hard to kind of get into the weeds and learn on the job from 10,000 feet. Phil Murphy came from being an ambassador to Germany, so didn't really have understanding. And 8 years before that, Chris Christie came from being a U.S. attorney, didn't really have one. And then 4 years before that, John Corzine came from the U.S. Senate. I think understanding local government would be an asset to both South Jersey and to municipalities by municipality. And I think that that's something, you have 3 mayors that are running for governor. I think it's something that all 3 of us bring that's a little bit different and really important to you as a constituent, particularly as it relates to areas that are neglected. Not understanding the connectivity of local government leads to being beholden to those political systems, like George Norcross in particular in South Jersey. And I think that if you're going to change some of those things, it starts with understanding local government and then also being unapologetic for, wanting to change the politics. Yes?
Yeah, first of all, as a former hometown Jersey City, appreciate what you did for my town.
Thank you.
Greenville could still use a little bit of work.
I agree.
My question is, you talked about Quaddy Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
I have 3 children, late 20s, early 30s. How are you going to engage the young people, the next generation of Democrats, to get involved in the political process, just to even turn out and vote? As we know, 1/3 of the nation didn't vote in this election. So what are you going to do? Because there are, no offense to the other 100 people that are the same or similar age to myself, we're missing that demographic. What are you going to do?
Well, I'm at Rutgers next week, actually, the Rutgers Dems. It'll be my 2nd time. I'm at Ryder a lot, but why do you think they don't vote? I'm curious.
Because
I have
the issues that are important to them, universal health care,
Yeah.
once they're 26,
Yeah.
they can't be on the benefits. LGBTQ rights.
Yeah.
I have a daughter who's gay.
Yep.
My other daughter she's in Thailand right now, so her husband is from Thailand, and they're concerned about being able to come back in the country, even though, he's legally allowed to come back. So there's a lot of issues like that. And obviously environment is more important than younger people, even if we're concerned about it. They're the ones that are going to be around in 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to make that.
Yeah.
Other issues like that, that just, are important to them. I don't think we can focus enough on that.
Yeah.
Or kind of take the main, like middle of the road approach to those topics. That's why they feel disenfranchised and not engaged.
I agree. On the issue, so I haven't spent time at universities, and we're targeted on that from a political standpoint because they're not in session in the June primary, right? So the schools aren't there, so it's hard to kind of target in the same way, but I do have a lot of volunteers that happen to skew on the younger side, which is interesting. I do agree with you that you gotta give them a reason to vote ultimately. Amongst the candidates, as it relates to the LGBTQ community, the immigrant community, healthcare issues, which we could talk about, I think I'm in a pretty specific, unique lane when we talk about how we could change this stuff that impacts them. Also, if you look at our education platform, it focuses on 2 components in particular. It focuses on the first 2 years of life, okay? And how do we support early families? And then higher education in particular around county colleges and coastal universities in New Jersey, and we get really into the details about changing some of that stuff. I do think it's important to meet them where they are at, and I'm gonna go a step further, that if we nominate in June a Republican light, okay, this coming June, then there is zero chance, mark my words, as sure as I'm standing here, there is zero chance we will be successful in November. Because the exact reason that you touched on it skews maybe marginally purple now, New Jersey, right? We could talk about that, and those younger voters are really important, and you gotta meet them with where they're at. I think I'm closest to doing that, yeah, I'm spending time on it, and I agree with you on the fact that they're crucial to kind of success here.
Could you speak up a little louder?
Yes,
Oh.
is that better?
Much better.
Much better, okay. Yes, yeah, sure, and then we'll go to you, sir.
My family owns a third-generation manufacturing company in Mercer County in New Jersey. One of the things when Trump ran the first time, he was so completely wrong on how manufacturing works in this country, and yes, we've lost employees who were more productive because innovations. So having said that, that's not really my question. How do you plan to support more manufacturing in New Jersey? Because you talked about South Jersey, that's right for that kind of area. We're in Bayville, we are very successful, third generation.
Yeah.
You know, we support our employees as best we can. We try to run an honest, ethical company, and I think there's a lot more opportunity for that.
What do you manufacture of yours?
Sorry about the people with plastics. If you,
You're sitting next to the guy, how did you chance that?
but I'll explain this to you. So if you go to rip open a bag of potato chips or a candy bar, we make the knives and crimpers that cut and seal the ends of snack food packaging. Now, I will say one thing in the industry, they are looking to make more sustainable and better packaging, and we are working, we actually have a packaging lab, and we are working with companies to work on sealing dyes that will work on those better packaging. So, I'm sorry, and
You don't have to sanitize it.
but that is what it is, and we are a third generation business here in New Jersey.
Yeah, so, I think that the biggest thing that the state can do to be helpful, okay, is repositioning how the EDC gives grants today and who they focus on. A lot of Trenton's priorities today are focused on those large brand name corporations that move maybe across the river from New York to New Jersey, and less so internal companies that are thriving or small businesses that are developing. And one of the things that we talk about a lot in our economic development and affordability components is prioritizing entrepreneurs and prioritizing people that are here as it relates to businesses that are growing. And manufacturing would be a big part of that. So I think it starts really where the governor can help you is around EDC and permitting and grants in particular.
One of the things that we lost over time, that's coming back a little bit, we would get interns from the
Universities,
schools
yeah.
and the Botex
Oh, the
schools.
votes, okay.
Most of our employees do not have a college degree.
Yep.
But these people are computer programmers. And manufacturing isn't what it used to be. You have machining centers that you program. You're not standing there, something goes by on the widget and you're adjusting. So another thing that bothers me is that we over-prioritize university education and not vocational education. And I think that's where we also lose people
It's a good
in
point.
these kind of things. And
It's a very good point.
our employees are well paid. We pay for their insurance completely. They don't pay for their insurance. They get their profit sharing plan. They get annual bonuses. They are part of the team. We try to make it as much of a partnership as possible. So we try to do everything right. And, you know, we're looking, but then it's hard to find anyone. It's very difficult to hire someone who doesn't have the experience. And we train, we do what we can, but it'd be great if we had a stronger vocational program.
Yeah, we should talk afterwards. I'd love to get some more thoughts on that. That's a good point. Yeah, get your contact info.
Great.
We'll go here and then there, if that works? Yeah? Uh-oh, let's go over here.
Education funding.
Yes.
How do we fix it? It is so screwed up in New Jersey, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
I'll repeat the question for you. I'll repeat the question.
The question is, we're talking about all of these big.
Yes,
things
education
happening,
funding.
But we're not talking about the most important thing. We have to get our kids educated properly, and the schools have to be funded properly.
Yes.
And, I think that is the core of everything.
Yeah, so her question is about education funding and funding the schools properly and making sure that that they have the resources, and that's the core of everything, is basically what
I agree. If I was to say the two things that I think Phil Murphy has done very well, okay, so talk about New Jersey Transit where I think he hasn't done well, I think he's done particularly well about funding the pension, I think he deserves credit for it, and the second thing is funding the education, fully funding the education program. I think that the next governor, and let me take a step back, when the education formula changed in New Jersey, going back to some experience or question about stuff in Jersey City, when the education formula changed 4 or 5 years ago, the biggest loser in that state fundings was Jersey City. We lost $250 million, okay? So we have a big understanding about how that impacts municipalities and quality of education, okay? When you look at it, if you spend some time on our website afterwards, which I hope you do, and you look at the education plan, we talk about a couple things there. Okay? You mentioned we talk about early childhood and higher education. The K through 12, changing the school funding formula that was put in place in 2008 needs to be looked at wholesale, with particularly bringing out the special needs funding. Right now, the special needs funding is a big cost to municipalities, and it's driven by the municipalities, and it should be carried by the state ultimately, that cost, that line item. It would drive down your property taxes ultimately and help on the funding formula. But I think that's the place to start on that.
I'm just saying that money fall, this area is full of very small schools.
Yeah, on the consolidation, so Vin, let's talk about that for a second. Vin has done a good job, and Vin deserves credit on this because he's been out there in the consolidation, and he talks about forced consolidation, and that's a very tough political place to be, okay? And so he deserves credit for venturing into a place that is very politically uncomfortable. I do not believe so. On the consolidation front, we have a lot of experience in Jersey City on this, and I have a track record on this. When I got into office, we eliminated a lot of those autonomous agencies, the parking authority, the incinerator authority. We combined the police and fire into public safety. So we did a lot of that stuff. So we've had some successes. We combined a lot of resources with the schools, garbage collection, etc. And at the same time, I have examples of things that I lost. We tried to combine our fire department with Hoboken. I have 700 firefighters that report to me. We tried to combine it with Hoboken because it would have helped me from building a firehouse on the border, and it would have helped them with better fire resources, and the union pushed back. So I learned in that process as well. I think that forced consolidation in the schools is a very, very hard thing to achieve because people are very parochial and possessive of their schools. The better way from experience to get consolidation and drive your property taxes down is to take pieces of government that are less offensive and combine them into different entities. I'll give you an example of that. Like your health department, right? If you have a health department here, you probably shouldn't. Your health department should roll into the county. It should be a county health department. Animal control. Municipalities have animal control. If you drive down that, let's put it into the county. STD tracking, things like that. And I think you could drive down costs with consolidation on that front without forcing consolidation and people losing their identity, which is where you're going to run into a real hardship on. Yeah. Yes.
I lived in Hudson County for a number of years, specifically Union City.
Okay.
Yeah. I married a Cuban immigrant. Our children are bilingual.
Yeah.
What's happening to immigrants in this country pains me deeply.
Yeah.
2 questions. What are your reactions to how the Trump administration is handling immigration issues in this country? We know change is needed.
Yeah.
What do you think about what they're doing? And 2, how will we continue to keep New Jersey a welcoming community
Yeah.
for immigrants as it has been?
Can you hear the question of that? Let me first speak to personal background. I came here, I told you I come from a family of immigrants myself. My mother devoted her entire career to immigration services in Newark, helping people get citizenship. When I was elected in 2014, we established in City Hall a Immigrant Affairs Office that is currently the only nationally accredited immigration affairs office in the United States of America. We help about 1,000 people a year get citizenship. Our administration has been at the forefront of the refugee resettlement program here for both the Ukraine and for Afghanistan, okay? We reaffirmed in 2016 and 17 that we are a welcoming community, and I've been unapologetic about the Immigrant Trust Act. Some of the other people up there on the stage say that I'll support parts of it. I think it's essential that you protect everybody who's here and you pass that in its entirety. I shared at the debate that in the raids in Newark, a week and a half ago, one of the buildings that was raided was my father's. I posted a video of 20 ICE officers going in without a warrant, and there are 4 apartments in that building. One is a public school teacher in Irvington, one is a Army veteran, one is an electrical contractor with the state of New Jersey, and one is an immigrant affairs business that took over for my mom, okay? And they went apartment to apartment searching for somebody. They arrested nobody, they had no warrants. The next day, one of the tenants asked to move because she was scared, okay? And what I say with that is that even when you believe that people see, which is clearly like a racist bend to it, when they see a person or a Latino person on TV with handcuffs and ICE around them, and people, even the Democratic Party, there's a polling shows you there's a lot of people that say, yeah, that person should get thrown out, right? Which if you take a step back from that, right, and use what I just told you about my family as an example, you know, everybody's entitled to due process. Everybody here has constitutional rights and should be protected by that. I said at the debate, and it happens to be true, I'm running for governor. I'm in a prominent position, okay, I'm the mayor of Jersey City, and that can happen to my family. It did happen to my family a week ago. It means it can happen to your family. So even if you fall on the side that these ICE raids are correct and some of these people need to get thrown out, there is a due process that needs to be followed, that everybody is protected here in New Jersey. And New Jersey needs to be at the forefront on that. I think that Matt Placken has done a very, very good job in standing up for New Jersey. I also said yesterday that I would give Matt Placken the opportunity to stay on as the Attorney General if I get elected. I think that's a very, very important thing. A, to continue some of the work that he did. B, to finish the prosecutions that he started as it relates to the political process. I think those are important to do. And again, I would be the same type of governor that I've been as a mayor. One thing that's different about me versus the others is there's 12 years of a track record. You want to know what I think about the trans community? Well, in 2018, we expanded coverage in Jersey City before this was a conversation because we have 3 trans employees to make sure that we cover them with healthcare because we want to see them for where they are, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure this thing because there's a track record. There's a different track record. And with regards to immigrants, again, I don't think my track record is even close to any of the other 5. And I would be the same sort of person as governor. We have a couple questions over here. Yes?
Just to piggyback on what Mary Ellen said.
Yeah.
You know, you talked about the Democrats enjoying seeing people in handcuffs. One of the things regarding...
Not everybody, but unfortunately,
yes,
yeah.
Yes, I agree, sorry. I think that we should also focus with respect to immigration on the economic impact that it will have in New Jersey.
Yes.
I called my local state senator, Declan Scanlon, and I talked about the impact it would have on Monmouth County. All of our restaurants down here rely on immigrants and legal or not legal, undocumented, I should say. So that, and they're members of our community, and I feel that we need to talk about that economic impact. I live in a town where everybody gets their lawns manicured, and it's not people that look like me that are doing that. So I just going forward.
I think 100% you're correct about that.
I think that's something that in our individual conversations we talk about.
You could hear what she said. Did you guys hear it? She was talking about the fact that the immigrant community has a huge impact on businesses throughout Monmouth and Ocean County, and that what's happening from the federal government could essentially impact businesses like this, okay? And I would piggyback on that, and I would tell you that Jersey City last year, we had the lowest homicide rate in the history of the city, okay? So when I came into office, we were in the mid-20s per year, which now for the first time we hit single digits. Last year we had 7 homicides. It was a big city, okay? Now why? The question is why, right? Yes, the policing, we've done a lot of training and stuff. We invested a lot in technology, but I would say the biggest differentiator is that we've built a lot of community partnerships and trust, right? And so what's happening now with the federal government undermines a lot of that stuff for us, which is dangerous as it relates to safety in places like Jersey. I see it as the mayor, that people wanting to cooperate or interact with government is less so now than it was maybe a month ago. And that is a complicated thing for municipal government beyond the business sector. So I hear what you're saying, and I see it as a mayor as well. Yes?
Kind of going off of all of this, what are your plans as governor? Hopefully you'll be on with them, but if not, for protecting the LGBT community in terms of like name changes and just keeping them there.
I think that what we can do at the state level, you have a champion. I think Phil Murphy has been good on this in this space, and I would continue that. Jersey City has the highest rating of any municipality in the LGBTQ community. You're familiar with that?
Yeah. Sorry, I've been in Jersey 11 years.
All right, that's great. You like all the Jersey City people. It's like a secret weapon that I have. But this would continue. I think he's done a good job on that. So, yes.
Hi, welcome to Monmouth County.
Thank you.
Mayor. You touched on the abolition of the county line in the Andy Kim lawsuit.
Yeah.
Yet we're still waiting for a ballot redesign legislation from the legislature, and they said they were going to do it by the end of last year.
Yeah.
So tell me, obviously, I love your idea of down ballot candidates and having a run for the legislature to support you and your policies. But can you talk about other good government reforms like open primaries, partisan elections, and particularly ranked choice voting?
Yeah, so I am a huge advocate for ranked choice voting. I'm very public on that. Okay, I'm part of the organizations that advocate for it. Jersey City passed a trigger ordinance. Great. I run a nonpartisan elections in Jersey City, so we have to speak to everybody, which I think is great. Ultimately, on the ballot redesign legislation, I would say two things about that. First, they changed the number of signatures, and a lot of people thought that changing the number of signatures to raise the number that's necessary and going back to January was targeted at me and those 40 people running for office. I'm not saying anything out of school, but it speaks to the fact that they are scared of what we are doing. Why else would they change it this year going back further? It's not like there was a huge line of hundreds of people looking to run for state assembly here, okay? That you needed to raise the bar to make it more difficult, okay? And let alone go back to the beginning of this year. When we started the campaign, let me just talk about how the campaign is structured, because it was more of a political question. We have about 1,200 active volunteers that are involved every single week, okay? And I don't classify a volunteer as somebody who signs up online. That is not a volunteer for us. That is somebody who is likely voting for me, but we don't call them a volunteer. What we do is when somebody signs up, I respond to them. It goes to me because I value the fact that they are part of this or willing to get in there, so it deserves a thank you from me because I'm not in this to waste their time. And then we set up a time for a Zoom or PowerPoint on a set time. And it's very deliberate on a set time. Why? Because I want to see if the person is willing to do something for the campaign that's tangible on a set timetable, because are they willing to really be a volunteer? That time might not work, so we'll give them another time, and then another time. So you have about 1,200 people that have done this Zoom and PowerPoint. In the Zoom and PowerPoint, we outline, and this is the same structure for a year and a half, so predating Andy or any of this. We would outline that in the line system that exists then, how we're going to beat that. And I would go into details on numbers on this is why I think what we're building is a little bit different and going in this direction. Now, 4 months before the lawsuit of Andy, okay, I had the Hudson County line in theory, and I had the Warren County line, and likely to win the Atlantic County line. So I had line support of significant lines. And, I was asked in an interview, and the New Jersey Globe reported this. They said, "What do you think of the county line?" Okay. Now they asked Mikey Sherrill this, and they asked Josh Gottheimer this. Mikey dodged it, and Josh said he likes the county line. And my response was the only one that said, "If I get elected, I'm going to do away with it because it is wrong." Okay. And now I say that because I had everything to lose by saying that. I was the only one of the three that said that, and then subsequently they walked away from me. These county lines, so I didn't really care, right?
But the point of that is that I believe that we are building something that will be competitive in June regardless of what those county bosses do. I feel very comfortable. You see the number of people that are involved in the campaign, it says volumes. One final thing on this, because it's a political question. When you look at the health of a campaign in New Jersey, okay, it is different than anywhere else in the country. In the health of a campaign in New Jersey, people look at it and they say, well, he's got all these county lines, or she's got these county chair people, so she's gonna win, or he's gonna win. It's how people in New Jersey look at it. It's an archaic way of looking at it, and no place else in the country do they look at the health of a campaign like that. The health of a campaign is looked at, how many volunteers do you have? Well, we're number one. How much money have you raised? Well, we're number one. How about labor support? Well, we're number one or number two. How about endorsements from real municipal people? I would put us against anybody because our endorsements are different. Why are they different, you might ask? When the other candidates do a list of endorsements, let's say Josh has an endorsement from Bergen County, get 100 people on that list, or Mikey in Essex. The chairperson is basically lining up council people and saying, can you add your name? And all these people add their name, because it's the path of least resistance, right? We built our campaign around mayors. I started that a year and a half ago intentionally. Why mayors? Because a mayor has a different amount of credibility with the electorate. If you ask an elementary school kid anywhere in the country to name 2 elected officials, they would tell you who the President of the United States is, and they would probably tell you who their mayor is, because it's a personal relationship. They might have their parents complain about him, they might see the person take out the garbage. It's a different degree of credibility. We have 50 or 60 of the most prominent mayors of Democratic municipalities that are standing with me. Why is that different? Is because that person is willing to stand against the tide, against the political system, and say, I'm willing to be a little bit uncomfortable because I'm going to get pressure from the political system, but I believe that this guy is going to do a good thing for New Jersey. It's a different animal than the other endorsements. And so I tell you, when you look at the health of a campaign, regardless of they passing that legislation or not, I think we're going to be extremely competitive in June, and if they don't pass it, we will force it through when I'm elected governor. I can tell you as sure as I can, I am not a wallflower. I am an aggressive person, okay? So you can rest assured that we will push for those changes.
Thank you, Mayor.
Two more questions.
Okay, I gotta go to Hernando County. Yes.
Offshore wind.
Yes.
Kind of fell off the rails.
Yeah.
I didn't do my homework, I don't know what position you were in, so.
Yeah, so, okay. I'm a supporter. Let me start there. I think renewable energy is really important. But it also, when you talk about, let me take a step back. Out of the 6 of us, there is one candidate that has an environmental platform and sustainability platform. He happens to be in this room right now, okay? And it's because I am passionate about it, because I think it's really important. I told you earlier that I have 3 little kids, and you know, it's not nonsense when I tell you that I'm very concerned about what this place will look like in 20 years at the rate that we are seeing climate change and natural disasters and these extreme weather elements. I think that there is a lot that we can do in the current environment in a federal government that is not cooperating with us. So clearly we're not going to be able to move forward on wind. I mean, that's very clear from the Trump administration. And anybody who tells you otherwise is not being truthful. But it doesn't mean, because they're not believers in climate change, that we should put that on the back burner. There's a lot of things that we can still do that New Jersey can control. I talked a lot about preservation of open space, because New Jersey can acquire land, and we could actually put our flag in the ground that this is maintained as open space. I talked about a moratorium on those big warehouses that are taking up that open space, because I think that that is counter to your sustainability plan long-term. Flooding issues, I think that we could prioritize here without a federal government. So I think the next 4 years, really most important thing we can do, prioritizing things that we can control without the federal government to encourage and continue the climate change conversation until we get a president that is more receptive, more willing to work with us. Okay? Well, that's one. Yes.
Mayor, 16% of the people in New Jersey are working poor.
Yes.
And they don't feel engaged in the political process.
For sure.
Because we're not talking to them.
Correct.
So what have you done in Jersey City? I see a lot of the gentrification that's happened. How do people have housing?
Yeah.
And how do you take some of those principles that that perhaps you have implemented
Yeah.
in Jersey City and make that relevant
Yeah,
across the state?
yeah, I think there's a couple things that you could do to give people an opportunity. First, I think a missed opportunity from Phil was around desegregation in education, and it works very closely with desegregation on housing, okay? I think the track record in Jersey City, we've definitely seen some gentrification, and part of the conversation is because you need a regional or statewide plan around housing. If one municipality isn't pulling their weight, it is a larger problem. I outlined how are we gonna get people to move forward on affordable housing obligations to construct housing that's affordable, frankly, right? There's a couple things that I think that we can do as a governor that would change the conversation right out of the gate, because housing is a key part to this conversation. First is there's no transparency at all from Trenton with regards to what municipalities are complying and building affordable housing and not. And the fact that there's no transparency creates this NIMBYs that control the dialogue, okay? Trenton can be better in saying, okay, Red Bank is here in the process, your mayor is doing a good job or a less good job, or they're fighting us, etc. And the second part about that is, coming as a mayor, I think I understand this, is Trenton needs to be using the carrot and the stick. You need to be rewarding the people that are moving forward in a vision that is consistent with the person that gets elected, and not rewarding them in a way the people that aren't. Let me just drill down on that for a second. So today, if you are building affordable housing, Trenton doesn't help you with more money for schools, doesn't help you with more money for infrastructure, doesn't help you with more money for roads, and at the same time, if you're not doing it, okay, there's no penalty that's clearly related to that, right? So a lot of people have created this kind of narrative, well, why would I do it? I'm better off fighting it, right? I think one thing that was consistent in my election in 2013, and I'm going to tie it back to the first thing I just said earlier, when I told you that you deserve a candidate that is very clear on what they're intending on doing, is because when I get in there, right, I want you to understand what I'm going to prioritize and how I'm going to operate that way. If you listen to a lot of the things I said it's important about being clear with you on messaging. It's important carrot and stick. It's important you understanding and being a mission-oriented as it relates to the objective of a governor. If you think about the executives that are the most effective at any level, okay, you could probably say XYZ is synonymous with them as an accomplishment. Like, think about it. Rudy Giuliani, before he went crazy, he would think about crime in New York, right? Mayor Bloomberg, he talked about smoking in New York and some of the things he did around health. De Blasio, universal pre-K, Jim McGreevey, insurance reform, Chris Christie, taxes in the toolkit that he was pushing, and pension reform. If you ask yourself, what is synonymous with the last 8 years here? What is the objective that we were trying to accomplish that you're going to look back in 10 years and say that's what they did in that 8 years that transformed New Jersey? It doesn't exist. So I'm telling you that the reason I outline things like what I want to do on the minimum wage, which some of the business community doesn't like, what we're going to do on economic development and incentives, what we're going to do on housing, is because I do intend to use the levers that are capable of, from a governor, to achieve those things. And that's kind of how our campaign is modeled, and I think that's the reason why people come out to vote for us. Okay, I got to get going. I would stay here for longer, but I appreciate that, Brian. Thank you. Really, thank you. I want to just say again, I really appreciate you coming out. I appreciate our hosts. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It really says a lot that people come out on a Sunday in this weather, and I don't take that for granted. Please spend some time exploring the policy stuff that I spoke about today and the other candidates. I would put it against any of the other 5 candidates up there, or the Republicans, the amount of detail and time that we put into this. And if you find it in your heart, please sign up, volunteer for the campaign. There's also a link there to sign up for house signs. We're doing that, yard signs. And those are like easy ways that you can get involved. It's all at StephenFulop.com. So thank you for coming out today. I really appreciate it.